Hey everyone, today I want to talk about all the theories that I've heard about the potential ending for 25-21. Basically, there's a huge mystery around the main character Hee Do and her teenage daughter Min Chae. From 1998 onwards, it seems like Hee Do has a strong friendship and will eventually end up with someone called Baek Yi Jin. And that's why it's so surprising when you find out that Hee Do's teenage daughter does not have the same last name as Yi Jin. And so I guess the main mysteries are, did Hee Do and Yi Jin end up together? Is Min Chae the teenage daughter Yi Jin's daughter? And finally, is Yi Jin even alive? So let's talk about all the facts, clues, and foreshadowings that we're getting from the drama about the ending. Some of these will of course be red herrings that the drama is putting out there to mislead you into thinking something else about the ending, but I'll mention all the important things and suspicious things that people have looked at to come towards their different theories. First of all, let's talk about the facts, because these are things that you can't debate about. They've clearly happened in the present timeline, and so they're the most solid information that we have about the ending. So we know that Hee Do's daughter's name is Kim Min Chae, and Min Chae doesn't recognize the name Baek Yi Jin, and neither does she recognize the look of Yi Jin when she watches a video with him in it. Hee Do's mother also tells Hee Do that she saw Yi Jin recently, and Hee Do looked surprised in that conversation. Min Chae also has a conversation with her mother Hee Do about their beach trip, and Hee Do explicitly says that she doesn't remember going on a beach trip with her friends. But I'd say it's debatable whether or not she is telling the truth, because she does have a kind of faraway look when she talks about how things have changed, and sometimes that's for the better. Looking at some facts from the past, it's also important to note that Yi Jin is a reporter and Hee Do is a fencer, and this mirrors the same relationship with Hee Do's mother, who was a reporter, and Hee Do's coach, who was someone who worked in the sports industry, and the two of them had a big conflict, and both Hee Do and Yi Jin have been warned by her mother, her coach, and some of Yi Jin's workmates not to get too close to each other, because there may be a conflict of interest one day when a story arises about the fencing team. And that ill-fated relationship between Hee Do's mother and Hee Do's coach seems to foreshadow something, because of the way that both of them had the exact same jobs as Hee Do and Yi Jin. If we look at all the facts, it's easy to come to theory number one, which is that Hee Do and Yi Jin never got together. They went their separate ways so that they could both fulfill their dreams. If they go with a positive split, it would be because Hee Do and Yi Jin realized they would restrict each other's dreams, so they sacrificed their relationship in order to help each other achieve their goals. But if they go with a negative split, it would be because they had a falling out, just like Hee Do's mother and Hee Do's coach. In this case, Min Chae is not Yi Jin's daughter, and probably from a relationship that Hee Do had afterwards. But in this theory, Yi Jin is also still alive. But I think from the facts we can also come up with a second theory. So theory number two is that Hee Do and Yi Jin do end up together for some time, but then they can't end up staying together because something happens to one of them. And when I say something happens to one of them, it could be that Yi Jin dies, or Yi Jin gets his dream job overseas and Hee Do can't move because she's a national athlete, and so they end up having to part ways, or they have a fight as mentioned in theory number one. And so in the end they end up having different relationships. So again, Min Chae is not Yi Jin's daughter in this theory, because why else would they have different last names? Also in this theory, Yi Jin could be alive, but he could also have passed away. But these are not the only theories that people have, because there's a lot of things that aren't quite adding up in the drama, especially things to do with Yi Jin. So there's a new theory going around, which is theory number 3. Baek Yi Jin is adopted, and so Baek is not his real last name, and if this is the case, there is a greater chance that Min Chae actually is Yi Jin's daughter. So there's a number of clues that suggest that Yi Jin may not actually share the same last name as his father, and clue number 1 is that his father created this false company under his youngest son's name, and traditionally companies are passed down to the eldest son. So this would make sense if the younger son was the biological son and the older son was adopted. Clue number 2 is when Yi Jin has a conversation with his dad on the phone, and his dad thanks him for making him happy for the last 10 years. And this seems really random, because if Yi Jin was his actual child, wouldn't he just thank him for making him happy since the day he was born? So a lot of fans are speculating that Yi Jin was adopted 10 years ago. And this could be a full adoption, but it could also be that his mom was a single mother or came from a abusive relationship, but then she remarried and the stepdad adopted Yi Jin as if he was his own son, and they even changed his last name. There's another scene scene where Yi Jin is talking to his brother on the phone, and his mom and uncle are watching the news, and his uncle says that Yi Jin takes after his mother's side of the family with the looks, and Yi Jin's mom gets slightly defensive and she says Yi Jin looks 100% like his dad, which is an offhanded remark, but it also seems like she's trying very hard to link Yi Jin to his father, and in some ways that may be because they're not related at all. Another clue is when Yi Jin takes Hee Do and Yurim on that school trip because they never got a chance to go on one, and so he takes them as part of the documentary that he's filming. And on the trip, all the kids talk about their issues with their fathers. So Hee Do's father died, Yurim's father is poor, and Ji-woong's parents have split up and his dad's not in the picture. But they never give Yi Jin a chance to talk about his family, and that could be because it's really obvious what's happened to his family, but a lot of the times dramas don't let characters talk about their stories when there's something to hide, and so that could be a sign that Yi Jin was adopted. So what does it mean if Yi Jin is adopted? If his original last name was Kim, it means that he could actually be the father of Hee Do's daughter, whose name is Kim Min Chae. This leads to theory number 3, which is that Min Chae is Yi Jin's daughter, but as Min Chae didn't recognize Yi Jin on the news, it could be that something happened to Yi Jin before Min Chae was born, and so he either passed away or Hee Do and him broke up. And then Min Chae's dad is either a stepfather that she thinks is her real father or someone who she treats as her real father. Theory number 4 is probably the happiest of all the theories and the one that everyone wants, which is that Min Chae is Yi Jin's daughter and Hee Do and Yi Jin are still together. In this scenario, Min Chae wouldn't know that Baek Yi Jin is her dad because she wouldn't know that he was adopted, so she wouldn't know that his real name is Kim, and then she also might not have seen his photos or videos when he was younger. And Yi Jin could have changed jobs as well, since his dream job was originally to work for NASA. One clue that supports this is in episode 12, they can sign their names to keep a copy of these photos, and there's a photo of Hee Do that nobody signs their name for except for Yi Jin. And later on in the future timeline, you see that Hee Do has that photo in her photo album, which might mean that Yi Jin and Hee Do end up together and this is their shared photo album. But of course it's not a very concrete clue because it could be that Yi Jin passed away and Hee Do inherited his belongings. There's also that scene where Hee Do's mother tells her that she recently saw Yi Jin, and Hee Do's expression is very surprised. It could be that Yi Jin is the husband that is in quarantine and somehow Hee Do's mother was able to get in contact with him due to her reporter connections, and that's why Hee Do's surprised. Or it could be that he passed away and her mother is referring to the fact that she visited Yi Jin's grave. There is a lot of foreshadowing of potential death in this series. For example, Hee Do says she doesn't like feeling like Romeo and Juliet at one point when Yi Jin brings her the banana milk, and that's a reference to two very famous people who were separated by death. And when they practice fencing together, Yi Jin uses Hee Do's sword to poke himself, and that kind of seems a little bit death-like. In the first episode of the drama, Hee Do also says in a voiceover that she's never lost anything before, and that's for adults to worry about, which feels like a foreshadowing thing to say. They also keep showing and talking about Hee Do's sense of resilience and how strong it is. So sometimes that is a sign that the drama is going to challenge that in the story. And also there's that line where Hee Do tells Yi Jin he has to laugh during the hard times, and I feel like that's going to be something she has to learn herself. But it could be a case that these are all red herrings depending on how the drama wants to go, and we could be deceived to think that it's going to be a really sad ending. So I just want to talk about one other possible set of endings that I've heard about, which is that Min Chae is adopted and is actually the daughter of Yurim or Sungwon. And at first this was the popular theory, but I think it's sort of been reduced a little bit more now that most people think that Baek Yi Jin is adopted. Theory number 5 is that Min Chae is neither Hee Do nor Yi Jin's daughter, but Hee Do and Yi Jin are still together and they adopted her as their own child. And this theory still relies on the fact that Yi Jin is adopted, so she wouldn't know that much about him and she wouldn't know that he had a different name beforehand. And the last theory is that Min Chae is neither Hee Do nor Yi Jin's daughter, but Hee Do and Yi Jin are not together either for any of the reasons that we mentioned earlier, and Hee Do ends up with someone else, and this is why Min Chae is curious about who Yi Jin is. So those are all the clues, hints, and foreshadowings and theories that I've heard about. If you've heard of something different, feel free to share in the comments. comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.